お待たせスーパーチャイニーズ3大同時の面白 RPG に加えてさらにスーパースクロールアクションで面白さパワーアップカルチャープレイよりスーチャイ3絶賛発売中です
Hi there! I'm Quinma and this plus review is for Super Chinese 3. Well, honestly, it's hard to do an intro for this game without getting into the history, so, how about this one and only time I combine the introduction with the history section? Oh, and just as a note, you can find the link to the trailer that played in the description below. Now, you may notice that the footage is clearer than usual, and that's because it is physically impossible for me to play this on one of my systems. That is because Super Chinese 3 is a game that was released exclusively in Japan for the Famicom in 1991. The footage you're seeing is actually from an English fan translation patch. Funny enough, even though the Super Chinese series has said name, the franchise was actually created and developed by a Japanese company called Culture Brain. Now, a while back, you may remember that I did a playthrough on this channel for a game called Little Ninja Brothers. Well, the fact that I adored that game is the reason I wanted to play this game, since it is actually the sequel to Little Ninja Brothers. In that case, you may be wondering why I'm doing a review for this game instead of another playthrough, and really, it's a simple case of me not knowing where to schedule the game and not knowing what to even label it as. It'd be strange to label it as a regular game since Little Ninja Brothers was in the Plus Ninja slot. However, I actually shouldn't have placed it there. In my ignorance, I unwittingly put a game in the Super Chinese series, a franchise about martial artists, not ninjas, in the Plus Ninja upload schedule. Super Chinese 3 is in fact the last game of the original Super Chinese trilogy. Now, there was a new trilogy in this series on the Super Nintendo, and that trilogy is a sequel to the original one, but that's not what we're talking about today. The Super Chinese series, though, does have a bit of a rough relationship with being localized. Only 5 out of the 13 games were ever released in the West. The first Super Chinese was released as Kung Fu Heroes, then Super Chinese 2 was released as Little Ninja Brothers, and like I said earlier, Super Chinese 3 was never even shipped internationally. Now, since I loved the second game in this franchise so much, I'm also hoping that I will love this game just as equally. But before I get ahead of myself again, it's time to recap the story followed by a review of said story. So if you want to skip all of that due to spoilers, then you can jump to the time on screen. We last left the brothers, Jack and Ryu, after they had saved Chinaland from the evil Yoma clan and King Gulp. Now on a day that seemed like any other, Chinaland was invaded by aliens known as the Galactic Army, and they took the Emperor hostage. After the Galactic Army's declaration, Prince Bokachin appears before Jack and Ryu to get help. The duo agree to help the boy save his father. On their way to the capital city of Yokon, the group learn that there are 5 galactic generals leading the army, and the one holding the emperor is named Gakin. They also learn the legend of the Skydra ninjas, heroes who saved the world a long time ago. In fact, up in the mountains on their way to Yokon, they meet with the spirit of the Skydra sage. The sage urges the Little Ninja Brothers to continue with their ninja training so that they can become like the Skydra ninjas and save the world. With the sage's encouragement, the group continues on their way and eventually comes across Yokon. They storm the palace, making their way past all the enemies, and make it to the galactic general who is holding the emperor hostage. Gakin attempts to take out Jack and Ryu, but our group is able to defeat the alien and rescue the emperor. After the fight, Jack obtains the Skydra armor from Gakin. The emperor urges the brothers to rest, but Jack argues that they don't have time for rest because the galactic army is still out there. Bokachin decides that he wants to continue traveling with the brothers to help save the world, much to Jack's annoyance. The people in Yokon tell the group that they should next travel through Hell Valley to reach the town of Hosho. When they reach Hosho, a man tells them that he will give them a hovercraft to travel across the ocean if the boys can destroy the Galactic Army stronghold nearby. It's an easy enough bout to do so, and once the boys have the hovercraft, they travel across the ocean and looks for the Galactic Army generals. Jack and Co make it to the city of Sion. Here, they learn that they'll need a vehicle called a cruiser in order to get to the town of West Valley where the Skydra Shield and assumingly another galactic general are. In order to get the cruiser, they stop by Dr. Segi's place. The doctor says that he's been researching a disease called moronic bacteria bacteria. It's a disease that attacks the brain and makes the victim stupid. For his experiment, Dr. Segi injected some into a sweet bun in order to observe it. However, Bokuchin has eaten this infected delicacy. Dr. Segi suggests that the group go get his micro machine in order for Jack and Ryu to shrink down to go inside Bokuchin and destroy the bacteria. While there are aliens inside the cave where Dr. Segi hid his machine, the boys are still able to obtain it. Jack enters Bokuchin to fight against this infection. While the bacteria does put up a fight, Jack is able to destroy it. Afterwards, Dr. Segi upgrades the hovercraft into the cruiser. The doctor warns that the people of West Valley have all been turned into morons. With their stronger vehicle, the boys cross the ocean to West Valley. Just as Dr. Segi said, the locals are acting quite strange. A man named Capricorn explains that this was caused by someone named Dr. Picken. However, the train to the villain's laboratory is out of order, so the boys will need to find a train engineer named Taurus to fix it. After trekking through the mountain where Taurus lives, and showing the bull that the boys know who he is, Taurus agrees to fix the train in West Valley. Once the train is fixed, the heroes make their way to Dr. Picken. After reaching the lab and achieving the difficult task of taking out all the aliens working with the doctor, the boys meet with Dr. Picken. A fight breaks out in which Jack and Co come out on top. After the town is cured, as thanks, Capricorn gives the heroes the Skydra shield. Then a couple of the townsfolk suggest that the heroes travel south towards Animal Town. In Animal Town, the boys quickly learn that the people hate humans. In fact, their leader, Princess Fauna, is convinced that her missing animal citizens have been kidnapped by humans to be eaten. She won't tolerate the heroes at all, but she has the Skydra helmet, so Jack and Co need to convince her that humans aren't all bad. It is funny, however, that due to reusing assets for the players' facilities, there are technically 3 humans just living peacefully here in Animal Town. Now, one of the citizens reveals that the missing townsfolk were not taken by humans, and it is safe to assume that they were taken by the Galactic Army instead. However, there is no way to get to them. One of these townsfolk then suggests that they collect a dynamite shell, bring it to a clever scientist, and attach it to a tank in order to create a vehicle that can break into the cave where the animals are being held prisoner. Therefore, the boys travel west to obtain the shell and bring it back to Dr. Segi. The good doctor uses it to build them the digger, so now the heroes can rescue the trapped townsfolk. Armed with the digger, the heroes make their way through the cave where the prisoners are. At the end of the cave lies the true culprit, a dinosaur alien general of the Galactic Army named Baron Puddin. Princess Fauna was partially correct in her assumption. While humans are not eating her citizens, Puddin is. Despite the difficult battle against Puddin, Jack and the others are able to defeat him, freeing the animals. With the people of Animal Town free, Princess Fauna apologizes for her assumptions. She provides the heroes the Skydra helmet so that they may use it in the battle against the Galactic Army. After saving Animal Town, the boys head west for Asobe City. When they reach this gambling city, they learn that the Lord of the Seas, current Lord, has joined the Galactic Army. The Lord has the Skydra bracer, however, his lair is blocked by whirlpools. With no obvious direction to go in, the boys pay an insane amount of money to a fortune teller to try and find a solution. The fortune teller tells them they need to travel to Fish Island. Therefore, that is where the heroes go. On Fish Island, they meet a fishman named Uotaro, who gives them some turtle food. Jack and the others then go to the moving turtle island and use their turtle food to take control of it. Thanks to the giant turtle, they are able to bypass the whirlpools and get into Current Lord's palace. After making their way through the palace guards, the heroes come face to face with Current Lord and the Galactic Army General, Lord Splash. Jack comments how Current Lord is no king, but he retorts that he will rule Chinaland with the power of the Galactic Army. Lord Splash, however, sees Current Lord as another pawn and orders him to attack. Despite his raw strength, the Current Lord is no match for the heroes, as Jack easily fells him. Afterwards, they receive the Skydra bracer. However, the battle's not done yet, as Lord Splash now attacks. The Galactic General is a far tougher opponent. Regardless of how long Lord Splash puts up a fight, Jack, Ryu, and Bokuchin are able to come out victorious. They then receive the toy key, which will allow them access to the locked gate near Asobe City. Getting past the gate, the heroes find themselves in the town of Galaxia. All of the toy citizens are in great danger as their chargers are failing them. After talking to the Toy King, Jack concludes that Dr. Segi may be able to help them. Therefore, back to Cyan they go. When they arrive in Cyan, they discover that Dr. Segi has left for some business in Yokon. Upon returning to Yokon, the heroes are told that Dr. Segi has left for Animal Town to get a gold bar. So off to Animal Town they go. Then in Animal Town, the boys just miss Dr. Segi again. They're told he went to West Valley. The chase continues, but in West Valley, they are once again turned away as Dr. Segi has now gone to Fish Island to get refined seawater. So now it's time to travel to Fish Island. There, they are told that Dr. Segi was there, but because there are no modern conveniences on the island, he had to travel south in order to use the bathroom. Heading south, the heroes find themselves back in Gachatopia. When they go see the king, they find Dr. Segi. Jack is obviously quite annoyed at the wild goose chase the scientists just put them through. Dr. Segi explains that he was gathering the items to create a battery that has infinite energy for the people. That way, the Toy King and the civilians will never have to worry about low power again. Dr. Segi then upgrades the digger to create a flying machine called the turbojet. Afterwards, the civilians suggest that the heroes go to the ninja village of Ikoga. Taking his advice, the little ninja brothers plus Bokuchin fly off to Ikoga. They learn that the ninja leader, Shin the Lion, has the Skydra sword. Shin says that he'll give the boys the sword if they can pass his test. They must take down his 6 disciples, the first of whom is beyond the House of Tricks. After trekking through this trick house, they meet Ichiko Kuno. Despite being one of Shin's ninjas, she stood no chance against the heroes. With one ninja down and 5 to go, the boys must once again travel all across Chinaland to find them. The second ninja that the heroes find is Saizo Kumagakure. This cloud goes down almost as quickly as Ichiko had. Next is Sasuke Katobi. Sasuke, his clones, and rollerblades were difficult, but ultimately he went down too. Then it is Goro Negoro, and despite Goro's talk, he took himself out. The next ninja they find is Hanzo Nettori, but Hanzo was laughably easy for Jack to defeat. As none of the previous ninjas stood a chance against the little ninja brothers, they go to find the final one, Genyosai Shiranui, but he was just as simple to take down as all the others. With all the ninja defeated, the boys return to Shin the Lion. The ninja master keeps his word and gives them the Skydra sword. He urges them to hurry south to Devil Island where the final galactic general, Shuba Bang, awaits. Upon reaching Devil Island, the boys show the castle guard, Lord Scorpion, their Skydra armor set. Lord Scorpion acknowledges them as heroes and allows them to enter the Devil Island castle. However, before they enter, they hear the voice of the Skydra Sage. Due to their accomplishments, the Skydra Sage names Jack and Ryu Skydra Ninjas. The inner workings of the castle test all of the heroes' skills, covering platforming through an icy range, going through another trick house, dealing with all the aliens inside, and even needing to become a mouse. But after making it through all of that, they come face to face with the leader of the Galactic Army. Shuba Bang notes that their invasion of Chinaland failed, but he still has time to get revenge against the protagonists. Shuba Bang is able to back up his words with his strength, but after a long battle, Jack is able to fell the villain. In a last-ditch effort of desperation, Shuba Bang calls upon the great beast of the galaxy, Gengara Gashan. The massive space dragon emerges. All 3 boys, well, really just Jack and Ryu, must combine their might to defeat the last of the Galactic Army's enforcers. Gengara Gashan is a hard hitter, but with a lot of strategy and determination, Jack and Ryu are able to defeat the beast. With the Galactic Army gone for good, peace has been brought to Chinaland. Everyone whom the brothers met on their journey appear to congratulate and thank them for bringing peace. Shin the Lion even comments that Jack and Ryu have surpassed the power of the Skydra ninjas of legend. Coming from Little Ninja Brothers, I can see the story of Super Chinese 3 is somehow both simpler and crazier than its predecessor. The sentence, "A couple of ninjas team up with the Emperor's son to save China from aliens," is the exact opposite of historically accurate. And I bring that up specifically because of this one comment I randomly saw at some point saying that Culture Brain only makes educational games. This is proof that they don't. Anyhow, as far as the characters go, as one would expect of an NES title, most of the characters are a one-off, so their personalities don't go very far past their unique character designs and role in the plot. Then, since I was playing one player, I have no idea what Ryu's personality in this game is. I can only assume that he is characterized the same way as the previous title, in which he is basically a carbon copy of Jack. But as a Japanese exclusive game, I have no easy way of checking that out for sure. What I can say is that Jack is consistent from the previous entry. He may be a stereotypical young hero type, but it works for what he has to go through, one of which is dealing with Bokuchin. I understand that Bokuchin exists for comic relief, but he does come across as annoying sometimes, and I think that's 100% intentional, since Jack also displays annoyance when Bokuchin does stupid things, such as eating that disease-infected sweet bun. However, I do like Bokuchin's dialogue during battle. His role as a comic relief is nice during the tense battles, especially when, on rare occasions, Bokuchin ends up doing the most damage between the boys. Though for the most part, he is a support character, both in story and gameplay. However, the most annoying point of this entire game is the Dr. Segi chase section. You have to go all over the place just to return to the original location, and yes, I know it is a common trope, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. I do appreciate that Jack was just as done with Dr. Segi as I was when we finally found him. Traveling all over Chinaland to find the ninja disciples wasn't as bad as chasing Dr. Segi because of the turbojet, which prevented the random battles from interrupting. Something I learned from the Dr. Segi chase though was that you can't stop in the middle of it. I just stopped playing when I was at this point for food or something, I don't remember, it's not important, and when I returned, Dr. Segi was randomly back in Cyan wanting nothing to do with me. I had to go see the cutscene with the Toy King again and start the chase from the beginning, and that probably added to my frustration to this part of the story. The same thing happens when tracking down the ninja disciples, but again, that wasn't as bad because the random encounters are optional for that segment. Now, something I'm confused about may just be something from the English patch, I'm not completely sure. So, the game refers to Jack and Ryu as ninjas, but in the original Super Chinese, they were kung fu heroes, not little ninjas. So, one of three things has happened here. One, my understanding of Jack and Ryu being martial artists is incorrect, in that in reality they were always ninjas and it was the original localization of Kung Fu Heroes that changed it. Or two, Super Chinese 3's English fan translation referred to Jack and Ryu as ninjas in order to use the same terminology as Little Ninja Brothers. Or three, at some point during development of Little Ninja Brothers, the people at Culture Bring decided to change Jack and Ryu's occupation. Whatever the truth may be, the brothers are ninjas here, and that is also reflected in the gameplay. The most obvious example is how the player has NP points, short for ninja points, in order to use their special abilities. More on that a little later. For now, it would be best to note that the gameplay can be divided into 4 sections: open world exploration, action, platforming, and turn-based. Somehow, Super Chinese 3 is able to balance all 4 of these perfectly fine, adding the platforming to the formula of the previous Little Ninja Brothers. Now, it is no secret that I'm not the biggest fan of classic platforming games, mostly because I'm just really bad at them. However, most of the time, I did not feel that frustration with the platforming sections of this game. The controls were tight, and I loved that I could cling to walls and eventually even be able to crawl on the roof. My biggest criticism is that sometimes Jack doesn't have the perfect traction and slips forward. This is the result of sprinting, where Jack runs faster and jumps higher, but also slides when landing. I did not know how to control this. I'm sure the manual explains how to switch between regular movement and the sprinting movement, but I did not have access to the manual, so I just had to feel it out. Unfortunately, this also extends to the action battles, which make up most of the gameplay. I would be able to recognize that I was in the sprinting action because I would duck instead of attack. And because I did not really know how to switch between the 2 movement speeds, I died more than once from accidentally ducking instead of punching. When in the regular movement speed and being able to punch normally, I had a blast. It was satisfying to take out bad guys. Then there are ways to vary the battles other than just punching, and I don't mean by kicking. New to this game is that sometimes enemies will carry weapons and the player can smack these weapons out of the villain's hands and take it for themselves. These weapons can be found on the ground sometimes too by breaking blocks on the field. While the weapons aren't as fast as the punches, they are more powerful and have a longer reach. Another way that the combat is mixed up is with the ninja abilities, which can also be used in the platforming stages. Over the course of the story, Jack learns new ninja abilities that vary from throwing items to transforming into a mouse. These abilities can't be used infinitely though, since they use up ninja points. Funny enough though, action battles can be completely cheesed by using one of the first abilities Jack learns, the double star. Not only does the shuriken only use up 5 ninja points, but it is also fast and very long ranged. Granted, I prefer to actually get into the battle, so I rarely use this cheat strategy, but it is nice that it is there for when one is getting frustrated by an abundance of action battles and just wants to end it quickly. Like the previous entry, these action battles come in the form of random encounters. I personally do enjoy the surprise of a random encounter, but I will admit there were times when the barrage of random attacks tested my patience. This frustration only happened twice in my playthrough though. One was during a certain story beat I complained about during the story review, and the other was when I got lost looking for a place called Fish Island. As it is an open world game, you can go anywhere. However, the instructions on how to get to the next area are generally straightforward, and the map is a decent size, so I was actually able to memorize where locations were without the need of looking it up. Not that I would be able to anyway due to the age and regional restrictions of this game, but the one exception was when I was trying to get to Fish Island. I don't know why, but every single time I tried to find it, I got lost. And since there are no save points I could go to without attempting to backtrack, and I do mean just attempt because I had no idea where in the ocean I was, the random encounters did get frustrating here. I believe though the game recognizes that this may occur to some players, because there's an instance shortly after Fish Island where you are temporarily able to travel across the ocean freely with no encounters. Furthermore, after that frustrating story beat I mentioned, you get a permanent item where you can travel across the entire world without a single random encounter, making them optional at this point. Even more, it is better than its equivalent from Little Ninja Brothers. In the previous entry, you also got a vehicle like this, but it ran on expensive batteries, which you would need in order to use it. However, Super Chinese 3 allows you to use the vehicle without any resources, just making the overall concept of avoiding enemies so much easier. On that note, different vehicles and upgrades to them is what allows the player to move forward and the developers to make sure the player doesn't get too far. For example, the first vehicle that is unlocked allows the player to travel across the water. However, it needs to be upgraded in order to travel in deep water. Thinking about it now, that's probably why, despite being open world, it was pretty straightforward to find locations. Anyhow, lastly, there are the turn-based battles, which are largely the same as the previous entry, but 1,000 times better! Unlike the previous titles, in this game, the turn-based battles are exclusive to the bosses, and there are no areas where they appear randomly. The battles are a tiny bit more complex than the previous game with the introduction of the ninja abilities. These can also be used in battle, however, due to how powerful they are, they don't always hit. But you can use the ninja abilities to heal yourself, so now you don't have to rely solely on healing items. Then attacking items like the Boo Bomb do a consistent amount of damage. Additionally, you can also attack with your sci-fi themed sword, which admittedly I had no idea I even had until the final battle, but better late than never. And of course, there are always the normal attacks. Unlike in Little Ninja Brothers though, the normal attacks basically has a range of damage it can do, whereas in Little Ninja Brothers you could choose to punch or kick. In Super Chinese 3, the choice is randomized, so Jack and Ryu may either punch, kick, or jump at the enemy, the first of them doing the most damage, while the last of them does the least amount. It is certainly a choice for the developers to make, but considering the inclusion of the ninja abilities, I do understand that wrapping all the physical attacks into a single package makes things easier to understand. Basically, you have an attack that varies in damage but doesn't use any ninja points, and a variety of moves that do use ninja points. Another random factor in these battles is the new character, Bokachin. Regardless if you're playing one player or two player, Bokachin is always controlled by the game. Bokachin is mostly a support, healing up Jack and Ryu. He can attack the enemy, however most of the time he doesn't do anything except give comical dialogue or attempts to do something but fails. But when it succeeds, then that is a total win! When Bokachin does decide to attack the enemy and succeeds in hitting them, then Bokachin will do the most damage between the three boys. Like I said, this is rare, but it is very helpful when Jack and Ryu do 8 to 14 damage on an enemy who has well over 100 health. Plus, since Bokuchin cannot be damaged by the enemy, if the boss does a paralyzing move that catches both Jack and Ryu, then you can still have hope of winning since Bokuchin could heal you or do major damage to the bad guy. My favorite improvement on the turn-based battles in Super Chinese 3 is the difficulty. Unlike in the previous game, the bosses are not slippery. Sure, you can miss sometimes, like in any turn-based game. However, the chances of hitting are so much higher. These bosses are so much fairer. If you watch my Let's Play of Little Ninja Brothers, then you know that I did a lot of safe scumming during the turn-based battles. But that was not the case in Super Chinese 3. There is only one boss that I did any safe scumming in Super Chinese 3, and that was not even the final boss. Every other boss, sure, there were times I lost, but I never once felt the need to safe scum in those other bosses because the game felt fair. I was comfortable starting the boss battle from the beginning because I knew I'd be able to make it through without any kind of cheating. When combining how it was much easier to actually hit the enemy and how Bokuchin would be able to help out when both Jack and Ryu were unable to move, the turn-based battles were very much a delight. I cannot stress enough how much more fun I had with them this time around. Now, when it comes to presentation, the game is somehow both prettier and uglier than its predecessor. So let's get the bad out of the way first. The most obvious negative difference is the menus. Sure, it functions the same, but the blue background just doesn't work as well as the original black background. The blue background for some reason made me think of computer, whereas the original black background could be easily ignored. Furthermore, now health is displayed as white lines in the menu. Previously, it was displayed as a number, so it took me longer than I would like to admit to realize that these random lines represented my health, as well as just as long to figure out how to read it, as there are times when an enemy does so little damage that it does not appear to affect the health bar. Fortunately, at the very least, in the turn-based battles, the menu reverts to the black void of the previous title with numbers, rather than the blue strangeness that is everywhere else. Another negative is in the action battles. The camera is zoomed in on Jack in the action battles, and at first it felt very claustrophobic. I did get used to it, but I feel like I shouldn't have had to gotten used to it. This is of course in comparison to Little Ninja Brothers, where the action battles showed the whole battlefield. Probably because of the zoomed in perspective, I at first thought Jack and the enemies in the action battles were visually ugly. However, like I got used to the close camera, I did get used to the bigger sprites. When I got used to the sprites, I started to like them. Speaking of things I liked, an advantage of the close-up sprites for the action battles and platforming levels is that the regular enemies get more detailed designs than before. With character designs in general, I can't point to a single character design I actively disliked. I think out of the new characters, the one I liked the most was Capricori. I know he's just a goat cowboy, but I thought it was a fun design. Jack still has the same basic design and relatively simple actions, but I like how he is more expressive. What I like specifically is, in the overworld, Jack will react in surprise when getting a random encounter. It's also neat that Bokuchin has an overworld sprite too and will follow Jack around. I want to assume that Ryu also has an overworld sprite if one were to play in two-player mode, but I cannot confirm that. Then the graphics and design of the turn-based battles and bosses were very clean and aesthetically pleasing. Unlike the new visuals of the action battles, I loved the new setup of the turn-based battles immediately. The cutscenes, if you can even call them that, were extremely simple and pretty much the exact same thing as the previous entry. The main difference is that in Little Ninja Brothers, even in one-player mode, Ryu would show up in the scenes as well. Whereas in Super Chinese 3, since I was playing single-player, Jack was the only one who spoke during the story. It is disappointing that Ryu is basically absent in single-player, but I do understand that it was probably decided to only have the active player character appear in the story. As for the audio, I enjoyed it, though I think at least for the most part, the majority of songs may have been ripped right from the previous entry in the franchise, and there is nothing wrong with that. After all, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is a saying for a reason. The music evokes the time period, and even now I can recall the songs without a reference. Since I'm not a music person, there really isn't too much I can say here other than it's good and I like it. If it isn't obvious by now, I loved Super Chinese 3. It is literally just Little Ninja Brothers but better, and I already loved Little Ninja Brothers. Despite the outrageous raisin stakes from the previous title, it gives the same feeling. Granted, Bokuchin could be annoying and there was a very frustrating story point, but in both these cases, I liked how Jack projected reflected what I was feeling as well. The writers could have easily made it so that Jack would be all positive and happy in spite of these characters and events. I personally am happy that he was just as done with some of the ridiculousness as I was. My feelings on the presentation is kind of weird. Like I said before, it's somehow both prettier and uglier than Little Ninja Brothers, but the positives outweigh the negatives. When it comes to the gameplay, which is what I was looking forward to the most, there isn't a lot of negatives either. Really, my one complaint is that in the action and platforming levels, it could be difficult to control whether I was running or moving normally, the latter of which I greatly preferred. Otherwise, everything was an improvement. It is sad that Super Chinese 3 was never released in the West due to how much fun it is. And I've said it over and over again, but I love this game, and I truly wish that it somehow, some way, manages to get an official Western release so that more people have the opportunity to experience it.